Shirley's work, I had never heard of Shirley before, and it seems like there was a show last year at Eric Firestone, and then there's going to be another show coming up at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. So Shirley is getting this all of a sudden 20 years after or 25 years after she's passed away, the work is really coming to the public. And how is that affecting you in your life and all of this stuff going on?
Well, she did enjoy success during her life, in that she showed widely. Museums, albeit not the very best museums, but museums did collect her work. She got wonderful reviews, but she was a woman. She was a mom. She lived in the suburbs. This was not the image in 1940, 50, 60, 70 of an artist. Just wasn't. And she had a very hard time breaking through, and was frustrated by that. Not enough to change what she did. Never did she change what she did to meet a market. But she did want success, and I think she would be blown away by the recent success.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing, like one of the best, I was just talking to somebody today about when I came here 24 years ago, I didn't know probably 80% of the artists that were in this collection, that we're showing here, and one of the greatest joys for me has been discovering artists that I've never heard of before, and then getting to show them and allowing the public to partake in that, because Provincetown is the oldest continuous art colony in America, and what that basically means is that the Cape Cod School of Art that was founded by Charles Hawthorne in 1899 still continues today. And the fact that artists still come to Provincetown to be inspired by the same thing that artists were inspired by over 100 years ago, that still excites me. And I think the discovery piece for me, and that will always happen no matter what. There were way more artists here than I'll ever know in my entire life, but the idea that I get to learn every day and then dig deep, and when you have somebody who has firsthand knowledge of the artist, it just helps the experience so much more, because you learn stories and anecdotal information that you would never learn from reading a book or what have you. But that's been one of the really great things for me about curating a show like this, is that one of the things that Shirley said in an interview, and this sticks with me a lot, there were a couple of things. So she came here in 1947 to study with Hans Hofmann at his school. And she said that she wasn't with him very long, but the takeaways, and this is what I think of. He told her she used too many colors, and that she started thinking about what color and space actually meant, and that her colors were too garish, and that she needed to kind of reel it in. So when I'm looking at these paintings, and I look at like this one, for example, what's the palette? Maybe 4 or 5 different colors, but the fact that you actually see that within the paintings, like based on an interview that she did, like those are the kinds of things that I find really fascinating. The other thing about the figure, the fact that the figures in these paintings are very abstract, and she came to a point in her career where she thought the distortion of the figure wasn't working for her anymore, so she really wanted to move in a direction where she was looking at the figure in a much more realistic light, hence painting friends and family and people that were in her everyday life. I also always amazed by, if we had some of those portraits in here and some of the other artwork, you would swear that there were 3 or 4 different artists in this exhibition, yet it's the same artist. And that's another thing, like I'm always in awe of artists that can constantly reinvent themselves, not afraid to take risk and not afraid to move in different directions. And that was definitely one of the things that attracted me to Shirley and her body of work.
Yeah, well, she did morph over time, and you mentioned that she was a sculptor and a printmaker, and she did silver point. I mean, she experimented in every medium, and I love that about her. She was very influenced by Haim Gross, for example,
yes,
in her sculptures. You can see that. It's interesting what you say about your discovery of what was in the collection, because in 1960, 62-ish, my mother gave one of that series to this museum. So she's been in this, she's been in this collection
Yep.
for a very long time. And then when you had your big anniversary celebration, we gave you a companion.
That's right.
But that's the one you asked for. So there is a little bit of, I'm sure, of discovery.
Yes.
Of discovery. You know, the Provincetown art world was just so important to my mother. We were here every summer. We lived at around, I think the number is 345 Commercial. It's there are two houses joined by a deck, abutting the fence that is the fence to the parking lot of the hardware store. So it's right in the middle of everything. And these artists, so the interview, I think it was the Dorothy Seckler.
It was, yeah.
So there was an art historian named Dorothy Seckler. She did these interviews of everyone, and including my mom and other people whose studios, like Alvin Ross, whose studio was 2 doors down, they were all in each other's spaces all the time, and they were arguing about art. They were arguing about whether there should be a museum, and if so, you know, how should it be, and how radical should it be, or how much it should consolidate the different movements of art through the town and thus through the country. So I witnessed all that.
Which is great.
I did also do one painting.
Where is it?
Well, there was a pop artist named Al Hansen, who, you're nodding. Al Hansen painted these, you know, really iconic pop art paintings. So, and he was going to have a show at what was then the Chrysler Museum, which is now the library. And he was notoriously, let's just say, relaxed about finishing his work. So he came one day to our deck, and he had a framed airplane. Actually, I have a picture of it. A framed airplane, and he put it down on our deck, and he told us kids, you paint red here, you paint blue there. We painted the damn thing. Because he was like really late. And it was almost dripping wet when it was marched down the street to the Chrysler Museum. So I did paint, but it was by the numbers.
It's all right. And so as a kid growing up and you know, here every summer in Provincetown, being exposed to that type of, you know, kind of freewheeling,
Yes.
how did that kind of shape you in where your direction and all that?
This was a great town to be a kid in because it was entirely safe. The town in the 50s and into the 60s was Portuguese fishermen, their wives, and artists. And that's everybody. And anybody who was an artist also did something else. So the handyman who kept everybody's house from falling apart was a guy named Peter Deschar, who painted pears, gorgeous pears, only pears. And you could wander around the town. The town is a big town if you think about it. You know, the long stretch of Provincetown. You could wander around freely. And my brother, who's 4 years younger than I am, we got on our bikes and we went. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. And a lot of the places we loved are still here. Like my brother migrates to the Portuguese bakery for flipper dough as soon as he arrives. Alvin Ross's, I keep pointing to Alvin Ross because the gallery is named after him, but Alvin's sister owned a restaurant called Plain and Fancy, so that was the big treat if we got to go to Plain and Fancy for dinner. That's now box lunch, but the building is still there. And a lot of the places that we love are still here.
That's just, I think the fact that was integrated into your life from day one, I think is just so important. And you do have a picture of the.
I do. So if any of you want to know what it was like to be in Provincetown in the period of time we're talking about, you should look at Mary Oliver's book called Our World, which is a beautiful book. It's a description of her life with Molly Malone Cook, who owned the bookstore, the East End bookstore, where everybody came. I mean, it was the center of town. And Molly took pictures of everything that was going on, including she took a picture of Al Hansen on our deck, she took a picture of Peter Deschar and his pears, she took a picture of what was then the Chrysler Museum. She had here's a picture of Norman Mailer in the bookstore. She's got a picture of Robert Motherwell in his studio. It's just it's a wonderful evocation of the town.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the best things is that people still keep making books and they keep writing and photographing because, as Nappy used to say, the way it used to was is no longer. And I think that the collection is so important here because it's the legacy of not only the artists that were here, but it's actually what the town used to look like. So if we did a show of wharves, for example, we probably have about 180 of those in the collection of different wharves painted differently at different periods of time. So I think this type of information is so important to PAAM and to the people that come here because another 100 years from now, it's this collection that's telling the story. And being able to have the works from different decades and different eras, it tells this most beautiful story.
Here's, you probably can't see this, but this is Al Hansen with the airplane on our deck after it's painted. And this is Alvin Ross in his studio, which was 2 doors down from us and where we hung out a lot.
Yeah,
So.
and Alvin Ross was a wonderful painter too. Again, another painter I'd never heard of, and now one of his paintings hangs in my office always. And when we did a big Alvin Ross show here in 2020, Jamie loaned some work, so I got to take more artwork off her walls and bring it into PAAM, which is always great. In your own path, in your own career, how did your mother influence that?
She was extremely determined, and she was a pretty diminutive person. You can kind of get a sense of that from her self-portraits, but she would not be bullied. It is true, for example, that she would take aboard criticism and input from teachers, otherwise why bother? But she famously argued when she disagreed. I mean, Chermayeff was a tyrant, and she just would not be bullied. So both my parents were very progressive, so they cared a lot about society and equality and opportunity. And so those were qualities that I absorbed from her. But my father was an immigrant and my mother was a child of immigrants. And one thing that became very clear to me during my childhood is that they wanted my brother and me to succeed in their new country. And it didn't matter how, and my brother is a professor of hydrology and geology at Stanford, and I've had this career as a lawyer and public servant, but it mattered to them a lot that we belong. And that, I've absorbed that.
Without a doubt. I think that's just so wonderful. And Bob Henry is sitting in front of me right here. I can't help but look at him because he's right here. And Selena Treef, who is Bob's wife, I remember them telling a story about when their kids' friends would come over to the house and be like, well, what do your parents do? My parents are artists. And it's like, well, what does that actually mean? And Selena would say, it means I don't clean the house. I'm on a ladder painting when these kids come over. And that's always resonated with me about my parents are artists. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the artists, and Bob has 2 daughters who are very successful in their careers as well, but the fact that artists, I think, and I'm totally stereotyping here, but the allowance of being who you want to be is there. And I think in a lot of ways that really helps you take risks and things that you might not want to do. And I wish Shirley would be someone I would want to have a dinner party with, because just from all the reading I've done about her is that the determination, not taking anything, and Jamie, you're very much like that, you know, you have those qualities, but the idea that you were shaped and influenced, but you went on your own path.
Yes.
And I think that's so important. And I'm in the same boat. My family business is used auto parts. I could probably fix your car, but I'm not doing that for a living. And I had a grandmother that was adamant that her grandchildren be cultured and go to the ballet and museums and all that type of thing. And when I told my family I want to work in a museum, it wasn't like, are you out of your mind? It was, do you think this is something you can do and support yourself? And I said, yes. And when my brother wanted to go to music school and be a musician, is this something that you think you can do and support yourself? Yes, I do. So I think the idea of having supportive family, whether it's grandparents, parents, or whatever, like, I'm so proud of my decision. Like, I don't wish I did anything else, it's because I don't know how to do anything else, but at the same time, I feel so lucky that I was supported like that. And I feel like in your instance, you know, you and your brother went on completely, you know, different tracks, but that was okay. And I love that piece of you in your life. And even your mother, like, who I believe had supportive parents about being an artist, right?
In their way.
In their way. But I don't think she cared.
I mean, they had no, my mother grew up really poor and was, until her dying day, a child of the Depression. And her anxiety about money and being able to live was just palpable throughout her life. If we were driving around Brooklyn with my parents, she would point out, we lived in this apartment and that apartment and this apartment and that apartment, because they kept getting thrown out of apartments. And she was several times shipped off to live with cousins. So her insecurity was huge. And my father was just wonderfully supportive of her as an artist. And he also, both of them were communicated to both my brother and me, you can do anything. And you should try to do anything, and we have confidence in you. They did give us every lesson known to man or womankind. I mean, piano, guitar, glockenspiel, every kind of dance, just to see. It was like throwing spaghetti on the walls to see what we might be good at. Most of them not.
Does your brother have any kind of creativity?
No, but he also collects. I mean,
yes.
he has.
Oh yeah, for
he
sure.
He has very interesting and deep tastes in art, and his daughter is the artist in the family. So,
okay. Is she a painter?
She works in photography and computers. So she creates art in a way that would be completely foreign to my mother, but which she would have loved.
And so when you walked in the show, when it opened, what were your initial reactions?
Oh my God. First of all, it was thank you.
Oh, I'm not fishing for that, I really
No, but so as Chris said, the more recent paintings have gotten a lot of attention. And in the last 2 or 3 years, many museums have acquired big, really large psychological portraits and figures that my mother painted in the last 2 decades of her life. These paintings have, I had not seen them for a very long time, other than the couple that we had in our homes. And they had not seen each other. They have not been in conversation with one another ever. I mean, my mother had shows of different periods in her life, but the conversation that is in this room never happened.
That's what I like. And that's kind of what I was going for. And again, for me, it's really about what knocks me out. Like, I ask myself is this piece extraordinary? Like, if I'm kind of like, and I do go by my gut a lot because I looked at a lot of work. I really, really did. And I was so happy that a lot of these kind of came together. Like I didn't say like, well, those 3 are going to go together and these 4 are going to go together. It just kind of organically happened. And I'll tell you right now that this is an interesting exercise for me because we have a big Blanche Lozelle show that's coming up at the end of August, and it's being funded by Art Bridges, which is an arm of Crystal Bridges, and they wanted me to, I was supposed to have it in last week, a mock-up of the exhibition and send it to them for their approval. This has been literally weighing on me for weeks. So I'm going to tell you, I had one of our wonderful interns here made this floor plan of the gallery next door, and I was sitting at my desk like with a pencil, and I'm like, what? It's so ridiculous. So I wrote an email to the people at Art Bridges, and I said, dear, the woman's name is Chris, I said, I just need you to know that what I'm about to send you is probably something that a 4th grader could do better because I don't curate by computer. I assure you that I know my spaces and I know how to curate, and this will be a top-notch show, but please don't ding me on what I'm about to send over to you, which is literally me writing on it in pencil, and I have the most atrocious handwriting on the planet. And Jamie, our intern, said, well, I can actually take your writing and, make that, type it in so it looks a little nicer. So I was like, okay. But honestly, I've been having huge anxiety about this because I've seen people try to do shows where they do these little mock-ups and they come in and it completely changes because it's about dialoguing between paintings and artworks. So I sent the email and I was like, oh, I can't wait, it's gonna come back like with a big red F on it or something. And she wrote back and she said, well, I don't really see anything wrong with this that should be flagged. And I was like, really? I was like, okay, but it has to go through like a whole slew of people. So I'm like, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't really care because I'm gonna end up doing what I wanna do anyways, because that's what you can do when you're curating a show. But that's been something that I get asked a lot, is like, well, how do you decide? And it's like, a lot of it is very organic, and a lot of it is what really moves me. And I'll tell you that being, like I said, we've had a lot of events in this space, and there are certain paintings that we had a string quartet in here, and the whole premise of the music that was chosen was in response to the artwork that was in the room. And I was sitting over there, and I kept looking at that little picture, the 4th one in, called Provincetown. And I was so fixated on that painting, and the depth that is achieved in that little painting is monstrous, and I couldn't stop looking at that painting. And it wasn't one of the ones that I had been like, oh my God, I'm crazy about this one, but now I'm crazy about that. And so I kind of keep switching around wherever I'm sitting to things that really just like knock me out, and I think about them and I think about them. But the painting on the wall with the pink and the blue, almost from here looks like it could be a collage. And it's not, it's paint, but the way that she applied the paint creates this amazing texture. And that's another thing that's so difficult to see when you're looking at things digitally, is scale and texture. I'm terrible with scale. Like, I know the size of paintings just because, but I'm awful with scale. And like some paintings I thought were gonna be like huge and they weren't, and that kind of thing, so I don't really pay attention to that too much. It's really about, I think about like the marks, the lines that you see sort of repeated in a lot of the paintings. There's a lot of factors in these canvases that are repeated, and I think I look to things that try to tie them together, whether it's palette, shape, size, scale, that type of thing. But this show really came together in such a beautiful way that I didn't anticipate. I mean, I knew it was going to be beautiful. No, I'm not worried about that, but just my bar was high, and this show exceeded my bar. And every time I walk in this space, and I love to come in the spaces by myself and just kind of zone around, but this show has been, I'm really, really proud of the show. And Jamie, thank you for being so generous and allowing me, like I said, to borrow what I needed and take things off your walls. And I don't know if you're going to get all of them back, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, you might not have been worried that it would come together, but I was, because the linear me was saying, how is she going to do this? I watched this process by which you picked what you wanted sent to you, and I thought, she says she knows how she wants this to look. Because I get these emails,
here's some more to look at, are you interested in these? And I'd be like, no. Well, there were a few. There were a couple that I did make some changes, but I kind of had a feeling about that, but I was confident enough that it would come together.
And in the I was confident too, but required a bit of a leap.
See, that's good.
Yes.
I think what we'll do now is we'll open it up for some questions. And, oh, okay, we have one right here. Okay. Wait, I think we're going to give you a microphone, so because this is actually being live streamed.
So yeah, you have to ask your question in this so everybody live streaming can hear you.
Okay.
Who had a question?
Right over here.
Yeah, right
I
over
think.
here.
Is the mic on?
Yes, it is on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
We can.
Thank you for doing this. It's just such a treat from the perspective of the child of the artist and from the curator, and it's just so great. So I have a lot of questions, so I'll see if I can just ask two. I'm very interested to know more about your mom's studio, and you spent your summers here, I think that you said, and I assume that you said the house was in Provincetown. But the other times of the year, she was in Brooklyn, is that right? And did she have a studio there?
So
oh, no?
I was born in Brooklyn. They lived in Brooklyn, and then my dad was in the service, so we moved to Southwest Louisiana, and then we moved to San Antonio, Texas, and then we moved back to Brooklyn, and then we moved to Levittown, when it first opened, the first Levittown, and then ultimately to Great Neck on Long Island. So. And she had a studio in our house, and then she had a friend who had a house that had an old boathouse, and the benefit of it is that it had a very high ceiling, and she painted there. It was always freezing, but
On the Cape, you mean?
no. So
Long Island?
I'm sorry. When we lived in Great Neck, she painted outside. She had a studio outside our home.
Mm-hmm. And can you do you have recollection of how she painted in terms of if she had a lot of easels up, if she pinned on the wall, if she was like, what was that? And I wonder, one of the questions I also had is about, are there archives? Are there photographs of that? And
So actually, in the wonderful catalog of the show, there is a photograph of my mother in her studio, and so you can see that she had easels everywhere, and she was very painterly. She really paid a lot of attention. You could see it to the application of the paint and the surface of the painting. So she had a lot of paint. And a lot of easels, and will work on more than one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
When she painted a painting like that one, which is much later, she painted with a brush about the size of a small eyeliner, and she had a little stool that she would scoot up and paint. And she would scoot back so she could see what she was doing.
So that was also, it was pinned up vertically versus on a tabletop or something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Everything was
always
vertical,
okay.
except for the printmaking.
Right.
Which-
Okay. Thank you. And then if I can ask another question.
Sure.
So when you chose the work for the show, I'm very struck by her color choices, and I mean, there's a lot to be struck by with the work and what is going on as a group in the work. But the kind of an incredible sense of coherency, the real strength of how she chose harmony in her choices, and then those particular spots in which she really punctures through with other kind of So anyway, I'll keep this brief by saying that I'm just impressed by your choice of looking at that and pulling that together, the harmonies of the whole group, and I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit of your thinking around that of her color choice.
I think the way they kind of, and when I was laying them out, like they're not all the way chronological either. Like they do start with the earliest paintings. They end with the latest painting, but the one next to it is from the 50s. It's just because they were both painted in France. But the idea, though, is that the colors kind of came together as I was moving things, because I lay everything out and then I just move and move and move until I feel like it clicks. But I also want to make sure that, you know, leading from one piece to the next, is the figure the common denominator, or is it the palette, or is it the scale, or is it? So again, part of it's organic, but when I was selecting the work, and like I said, I was able to see a lot of these in person before I made my final selections, I was really going for that color punch. Like I really wanted the paintings to pop off the wall. And the fact that her colors are so bold, and the scale helps too with the big ones. But even like this, you know, like this for me was such a painting that, like, haven't you seen the rickety old staircase in Provincetown? I mean, there aren't many left, but they're still there. Like for me, these felt very personal, but at the same time, the depth that she's creating was something that really grabbed me. Like this was something I migrated. The steam shovel, I don't know, I have this thing about industrial machinery paintings. I love them. And that one, I was like, I had to have that one, even though there aren't any others. But the idea of the geometry in those, and that kind of helps link these two. And sometimes, you know, I know when I love a wall. Like I think I did this one first because that's what you see first, and then I stand in every doorway, because there's 4 doorways into this gallery. What are you going to see? What are you going to see when you turn around? What's going to draw you around? And so that's really it for me. It's a lot of just moving things until I feel them click. And with these, it's almost like where the horizon line is would be. There really are kind of horizon lines in these paintings, but it's like that punch of orange that just keeps popping out in all of these, that little circle. Those are the things that I kind of look for. And what are those little tiny nuances that, like the kind of the hack lines that you see repeated as well. And so there ended up being a lot more repetition than I thought there were when I made my first selections, but I really liked the way it came together in a way that I kept experiencing new things or discovering new things when I was doing it.
Shirley would have loved listening to that.
Good. She is.
Any other? Oh, yep, I gotcha. Come in. I'm gonna have to stand between you and the speakers so we don't get feedback.
Okay. Thank you. You mentioned that she worked on multiple pieces at a time, which I find fascinating. Was that a conscious thing, or did she just get tired of something and move to something else?
She often said that she wanted to give something a rest and let her thought processes kind of mellow a little bit about a painting. And so I wouldn't say she worked on multiple things at once. It was more really paying attention to one piece and then backing off a little bit and turning her attention for a while to something else.
Almost like a cook in a kitchen. When some of the paintings that we see around here are clearly painted from a subject, and some of them you can see the subject, or at least I can, if I look for a little while, and I wonder, did she paint from the figure or in landscape? When we see the abstractions, was that something coming from herself, or was she painting from some visual field?
Boy, I mean, she had models for as long as I can remember. I mean, you know, the abstract in the corner there, that was definitely painted from a model. The landscapes, I am not entirely sure. You know, later in life, she took a lot of photographs, so that helped. But she would, my husband Rich, who's here, used to just crack up every time we were in a car with my mother, because she would say, "Pull over, I have to look at that cloud." And so there was a lot of that. It's not unlike, "Jamie, can you move your arm?" It's what she was seeing, and that intensity about her line of sight and her vision was amazing. Yes.
And I'm sure artists in this room can attest that you work on multiple things at the same time, correct? Yeah.
Thank you. Jamie, this is going to be the most unfair exhibit I've ever seen. It's unfair that she can jump from several different genres and be so successful in all of them.
Aw.
You know, from like color field painting to cubism to realism, but she doesn't stick with it. She could have stayed with, like, say, that orange painting at the end and be the next Helen Frankenthaler. Or she could have gone with the way of the Hans Hofmann and be quite content with that. But when I walk into this room, I see the courage that she had and the discipline that she had to, and the confidence to attack all of them. Like this one, Matisse, she could have gone the way of Matisse, but she didn't. And then you see this Tondo over there, like, where the hell did that come from? Out of all of this. So I know you said you didn't inherit any of her artistic ability, but did you absorb some of that discipline and courage through her artwork?
Those are two words that I definitely would apply to my mother, and that I aspire to still.
So you and your brother walked away with that, at least.
Oh, for sure.
Good, yeah.
But thank you for that.
Well, this show is outstanding.
Thank you.
Jamie and Chris, thank you so much for sharing this body of work with us. One of the great joys about PAM is sometimes coming in and not having any familiarity with the artist and just discovering something brand new. And you've talked a little bit about your mom's interactions with other artists here, Alvin Ross next door, and I can't help it, when I first saw those portraits over here, they reminded me a little bit. There seemed to be an interaction with Ross.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about her time in Provincetown, as far as showing in galleries. Did she ever show in PAM before? I would just be curious to hear more about that history in Provincetown.
She had at least one show that I can remember in the 1960s at what was then called the Doris Wiener Gallery, and she was part of group shows here, but not a solo exhibition. And the main way that she interacted with the art community was arguing. They argued. All of these people argued about what was coming through town and what should they respect and what shouldn't they respect. If you want to listen to an interesting one of the Dorothy Seckler interviews, I keep coming back to Alvin because he was such a good painter and died so young. She asks Alvin, who was a very realistic painter, how did he resist the movement to abstraction, which was that's where everyone went. And he just said, I did not think that it was disciplined enough. And I rejected it. And he just stuck with it. Well, those were the fights. They were real arguments, and many of them took place on our deck.
Anybody else? Richard?
Thanks so much for this show. It's wonderful. I, like so many people, was struck by an artist who I was not aware of before. And one of the things that struck me the most was her variety and how she went through different styles of work. And I was curious if, when you were around her, I know you weren't around her the whole time, her whole career of painting, but did you notice times when she was making a transition to a new type of work? Did she struggle with that? Did she talk to you about that at all? Or?
She talked to me, but I didn't understand. I mean, she did. She talked about things that she was trying to do differently and why she was doing them in the way she was. And, there was a period where she was influenced by Cézanne and another period where she was influenced by Giorgione. I did not get it. I did not understand. I understood it intellectually, but I could not understand how she decided, I'm going to try something not completely different, but different. So I listened, but I don't know that I really fully understood. I did understand that she was brave, I mean, she bucked a lot of trends. You know, if you look at these paintings, they are signed S. Gorelick. She never wanted to let on that these paintings were by a woman. She named me Jamie at a time when that was a man's name, although there were starting to be some little girls named Jamie. She had her views, and she thought deeply about things, and she argued with people, and she got to where she wanted to go. I described her anxiety as a child of the Depression. She had unbelievable anxiety before each show. I mean, anybody here have anxiety before a show? Living with that watching that was so painful. You knew she was going to do it. You knew she was going to get over it. There was one time when she repainted like half a show right before it because she was dissatisfied with it. And so she was brave but not immune from the anxiety that comes with those changes and how they would be received.
Anybody else? We have right over here.
I see you have so many of her beautiful works. I'm curious if you have all of them. Like, did she want to keep her art, or did she sell some of it? Did she give it as gifts? I'm just sort of curious,
Yeah,
you know, how her
she sold
heart.
quite a bit. Look, after she died, I took control. And I said, I'm going to take every bit of her work. She told me exactly who could move her work and who could store her work, and I saluted that, and I gathered up everything I could. And then, but a lot of it was purchased, and she did give gifts, but a lot of it was purchased. Some went to museums, so I don't actually know. Maybe when she becomes unbelievably famous, people will say, I have one of those. Yeah. But for right now, it's a little bit serendipitous. But she left my brother and me over 300 paintings, several thousand etchings, many, many sculpture. So she was very prolific, and that, you know, that's the legacy I've tried to protect. And I'm a lawyer. I don't know anything about the art world. And I've had to learn this. And I've had various tutors who've said, okay, here's an archivist. And my mother kept all the reviews, she kept the brochures, she kept the announcements, but they were all jumbled up. So I've hired archivists. I hired a wonderful art photographer who did really high quality photographs of everything. I've had everything digitized. So when she started to be discovered, there's a biography of her in the shop. She was this scholar came around and said, I'd like to do a book about your mother. He was a kind of scholar of feminist art, which she wasn't really, but you know, she got included in a lot of things because she was an undiscovered woman artist, so that made her part of this group. But when he was ready to do that, I was ready to say, here it is. And it was all organized and beautiful, and he was like, oh my God.
Yes.
So I applied, I applied my legal skills to taking care of this legacy.
And I can attest to it that they made it so easy on their end. Whatever you needed, high resolution images, you know, the information, archival information, like anything I asked for, I got it. And it was like, that is rare, let me tell you. Especially the fact that, you know, when I went to go look at the work in person, it was ready for me to see like what I wanted. It wasn't like rummaging through stacks, which I do love to do, but it was so organized and efficient that it made the process a lot easier than in a lot of instances where you're like measuring things and like where is it signed and is it the right way and that type of thing and that kind of stuff. And this was a piece of cake on that department.
We have a website that
Yeah.
has, if you look for Shirley Gorelick, the website will show up and you'll see these different stages of her work. You'll see a video that was made with wonderful comments by curators and the like. So we've tried to bring the work to life so that if people are interested, they'll get sucked in.
Okay, I think we have time for like maybe one more question. Anybody? Going once?
Oh, what?
Oh, right here.
Well, I just wanted to say, having had the benefit of colleagueship with Jamie through her wonderful career, a little bit of it,
Thank you, partner.
it's just a gift to have you here in Provincetown and overlap. And I must say, knowing what an outstanding lawyer you are, you share her powers of observation and appreciation of human psychology, perhaps in ways that each of you didn't understand about each other.
Well, thank you, Kathy.
at the
My
time.
mother was very empathetic,
Uh-huh.
painfully so. She didn't like basketball, but if you watched a basketball game and she was in the room, and a player was trying to make a foul shot and missed, my mother would say, "Oh my God, he wasn't even being guarded, and he missed the shot. What would his mother think?" So there, she felt everyone's emotions very deeply, and you can see it in these paintings, but you can see it in the later works where she's painting people she knew, and evoking what they were like. So I did grow up in a very empathetic home, but thank you for that comment.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think this has been wonderful.
Same
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.